Hello, and welcome to Lowering Costs and Raising Expectations in Statistics using Alta. I'm John Britch. I'm a marketing nerd at Knewton. You've entered this conference muted, to preserve audio quality, but we do ask that any and all questions you have, you enter into the question bar, and then later during the Q&A segment, we'll actually ask you to raise your hand and we can turn on your microphone. But for now, please enter your questions early and often in the question bar. This session is going to be recorded, and we'll send you a link to the recording afterwards. So our agenda, we have 45 minutes today, 35 minutes, and then 10 minutes devoted to Q&A. And here are the questions we hope to answer. What is Alta? How does it address teaching and learning challenges? And what are some best practices? And to help us answer these questions are G Tashbin, a professor of mathematics at University of Mobile, and Katy Auchter, another Knewton nerd, a content developer at Knewton. So we are going to jump right in. So G, to sort of define terms and set the stage, can you tell us a little about yourself and your courses in your school?
Okay. Nice to meet everybody. I'm G Tashbin. I teach math and statistics at the University of Mobile in Mobile, Alabama. I've been teaching for close to 20 years now. I've taught 3 years in the high school system here in Mobile, Alabama, and then 16 in higher ed at a public institution here and now at a private institution. And I've used Knewton Alta in all my classes since I've been at the University of Mobile. The first time I used Knewton Alta was a couple of years ago, and we have a statistics course here that was having some issues. And when I got here, they said, it's yours. You take all the statistics courses. Nobody wants these courses. And so I looked they allowed me to find a platform that would help me with all of our students. Well, if you notice, all four of our students here, all classifications of our students in the stats courses were freshmen, sophomore, juniors, and seniors, and they had all the different majors at the university. So we had, not only did we have different levels of students in terms of maturity and knowledge, but different groups of students in terms of their majors and how much statistics they will actually use. So I needed a platform that could work with all of these students.
Super. And which begs the question, why did you choose Alta?
Great. I took this quote here from William Spady, that all students can learn and succeed, but not on the same day in the same way. And I believe that. So with all of these students that we had, I had to find a platform that would allow them all to learn statistics. And I just didn't have time in the classroom. Just like all of us, we don't have all the time to teach in the classroom, every student, every level. So Knewton Alta allowed me to get the students the information they need, and when they came to my course, we were able to put it into play in real world situations.
Super, thank you. For those of you who are just joining us, you've come in muted, but please, for now, use the question bar to ask any questions, which we'll answer as you pose the question or later during the question and answer segment at the end. And speaking now is G Tashbin of the University of Mobile. So G will be joining us later to talk very specifically about how he uses Alta in his classes. But right now, what we want to do, since there are a number of different homework systems and learning management systems, and we really want to define, what exactly Alta is and how it's different from these other bits of courseware and learning management systems. And to help us do that is Katy Auchter. Katy, can you tell us about?
Yeah, so I can tell you a little bit about myself first. Before joining Knewton, I worked at Pearson in their e-learning content development, so I have a pretty good understanding of how a lot of these platforms kind of work and what makes Knewton different. I've also done some instructional design work at the university level, and now at Knewton, I am managing the statistics portfolio and also working in some of the developmental math content areas as well. But I want to tell you a little bit about Knewton. So on this next slide, Knewton has been an adaptive learning pioneer for over 9 years, and we are a technology company at our core with a passion for learning. So this is something already that makes us a little bit different from other publishers. But our biggest strength isn't something that you can see right away. It's definitely something you experience once you get working with our courses, though. We've spent over $100 million in building our platform and perfecting the algorithms that enable us to provide each student with a personalized learning experience. And this is how we're able to put achievement in reach for any learner. From the beginning, we've partnered with other education companies to power their adaptive capabilities, and now we're taking that to the next level with our own content. So about the content, I can tell you a little bit more about how we develop our content, where it comes from. Our content includes instructional videos and instructional text, as well as adaptive assessments. So different forms of questions, free response questions, multiple choice, graphing questions. And where does this content come from? We partner with universities who have created open educational resources, and we have several partnerships with institutions who have created OER content as well. One of our biggest providers is OpenStax, and for statistics, we also pull in content from Open IntroStats, which is another content provider. On the content team, we evaluate these existing resources, we prioritize revisions to them, and also create additions to these resources in order to fill content gaps where they might not cover everything we want to cover. We also develop new content in-house when there are open educational resources unavailable. And part of what differentiates Knewton is that we're able to update and revise content in real time. So we're able to make changes to our content that is immediately reflected to our users. Our content is constantly undergoing review and improvement. And that's done a lot by us on the content team. We're able to, we always evaluate these open educational resources before we include them, but we also have an in-house data science team that measures the effectiveness of the instructional content and the assessment content daily. So we're able to kind of revise content based on this information that we're getting from our users, and use data-driven revisions to sort of prioritize where we want to make improvements. Another interesting sort of differentiator for Knewton is that we're not only using stats content. So we're able to leverage our entire content repository to support student learning. And this means that even though a student might only be enrolled in our statistics course, we're able to pull from other content areas that we have courses in to help bridge understandings, even if it isn't in the statistics course. So this includes, basic math skills or pre-algebra skills or that might be useful for statistics concepts. We're able to kind of use those even though they might not be directly in the course the student is working on. So the way our platform works, and I'll show you a little bit about our platform or what it looks like from the student side in a moment, but basically the student goes into the platform and works with item types, answers a lot of questions, and we have a couple ways to provide remediation to these students when they're struggling. So when a student is answering questions, our first line of defense is item feedback. We provide extremely detailed question level feedback that walks students through the process of solving a question, which helps them kind of move forward in our courses. If students are still struggling with a concept, we'll provide an instructional module for them. So they'll be able to see either text or video instruction that will help give more direct instruction on how to solve whatever concept they're working on. And if that doesn't work, our last line of defense is basically to provide prerequisite material. So we are able to build relationships, and if a student is struggling on one concept, we can send them back to something prerequisite in order to get them up to speed. So I want to talk a little bit about the stats course in general and our goals in our stats portfolio. We're trying to develop statistical literacy and statistical thinking. So we have a couple of ways that we're doing that in terms of creating an informed user, providing data, real-world data sets, and stressing conceptual understandings as well as procedural and computational understandings. And this is just to talk a little bit about the courses we offer. We have introductory statistics, business statistics, statistical reasoning, and introductory statistics with basic math. And all of these have slightly different use cases. But one that's coming up a lot is our introductory statistics and basic math co-rec. And this course allows instructors to provide direct instruction on some basic math skills before providing, assignments that focus on those target statistics topic. If you go to the next slide, you'll see here is an example of how we would, provide some basic math assignments before going into statistics topics here. So you can see that the blue assignments are prerequisite content that might help students along in those statistics topics. So our statistics courses are geared to both support conceptual understandings as well as methods-based practice. So what this means is we have some of our content that helps, ask students questions about, the interpretation of the computations they're working with, as well as walking them through stepped-out instruction on how to make those computations. And this next slide kind of shows an example of how we're able to provide both discrete practice as well as cumulative practice. So this is an example of assignments in our hypothesis testing section. And here you can see in 9.1.1, we have, very granular learning objectives, where in one learning objective, they're only working on identifying the null and alternative hypothesis. They're only working on computing the test statistic, and they're only working on computing critical values. So these first four steps basically walk through these very discrete skills. And then in these last two assignments, we're asking students to put that together. So we're giving them mini case studies and asking them to synthesize everything they've learned in those discrete learning objectives to roll it into a single, a single understanding. So I can kind of take you through a little bit what this looks like in our platform and what the students would see.
Okay, Katy, you should have control and you can share your screen.
Perfect.
And we can see your screen.
Awesome. So a little bit about this is we are able to meet the needs of different faculty members. So we try to provide as much flexibility in our statistics course as possible. One way you can see that here is we have content available for the p-value, and we also have content available for the critical value approach. So we want to provide both strategies so that if faculty want to teach one or the other or both, they can. Another way we try and provide this flexibility is by supporting technology. So here you can see that we have an Excel assignment available, but we also have statistic calculator assignments available that give instruction on how to use either Excel or a statistics calculator to kind of solve these problems. With the Excel content, we're actually able to use that for different tabular data tools, including Minitab or Google Sheets, so that even though the instruction is geared toward Excel, it's flexible for other tools as well. So getting into the platform here, if we want to take a look, you can see that we've already kind of worked on this, but students are able to view related instruction here or go in and work on the adaptive assignment. So let's go in and take a look. Here, we're asking them to focus on this discrete skill of only only computing the test statistic. So we can kind of see that all of these questions are relating to that. We also provide very detailed answer explanations, so students get a sense of, if they've gotten this question wrong, they're able to see why and how to improve on the next question here.
And the answer feedback is specific to that problem, correct?
Exactly, yep. And then just to walk out a little bit here, if we want to go back to the assignment overview and back to the course, we're also able to see the Excel content here. So I'm just going to dive in really quick to take a look at this. So this is the Excel version where we're helping students walk through an entire process. So the first question we're going to ask in this case study is to ask them to define the null and alternative hypothesis. And then following that, we have this same case study, but we're giving them a set of data to use. So we want them to calculate the test statistic and the p-value using this data set. And we don't have an integration with any tools, but we do have this copy to clipboard and a download CSV that enable you to basically use any tool that you want to make those calculations. So we would do the calculations and define our answers. And then if we got it wrong, we would have direct instruction on Excel on how to solve this. And then the last part of this case study would be, what are we going to do with the hypothesis test, and basically determine our answers here. So that's kind of the demo that I was going to show from the student side. If you wanted to take the screen back, John.
And I should be showing my screen now. Do you see it?
Yep.
Okay, super.
And the last thing I wanted to mention about some of our statistics content is our partnership with Desmos. So Desmos is a graphing tool, and we're planning to use this in a lot of our upcoming revisions because we're leveraging it to help students visualize and interpret the work they're doing in new ways. So this is kind of a tool that basically would help students work with hypothesis testing and give them a better sense of what this looks like on the normal curve.
And now, Katie, when you talked about material being added in revisions, you're not talking about a 3-year revision cycle. You're talking about ongoing course improvement, correct?
Right. That's what's so cool about Knewton is we started, started some revisions in January of this year. Quite a number of those are already live in our platform, and we're live as early as March. And this round of revisions we started recently will be live before fall semester and then for summer. So.
Super. Would you like me to move on to the next slide?
Yep, all set.
Okay. Okay, so now we're going to, now that you have a sense of what Alta is and does, now return control to G Tashbin, who will tell us how he very specifically uses Alta at his school for his students.
Okay. In my current course, the way I use this is I get 40% for homework. I flipped this, by the way, years past, and you might be even doing this now, and some of my colleagues still do, is they would just give 3 tests or 4 tests and a final, and then that was the course. Well, I flipped this model because of having Knewton Alta at my disposal. I give my students 40% of their grade is from the homework because I want them to master the concepts, and Knewton Alta allows them to. I always tell my students, I want you to make 100 on your homework assignments so that when they all come in class, and I have the 4 different classifications, freshman through senior, and I have all the different majors, they've all had a chance, and I can tell before they ever come to class whether they understand the underlying concepts that we're going to be working with. Then in my current class, 20% are quizzes, which I also use for Knewton Alta. I've kind of gone back and forth. Sometimes I do a midterm and a final in class. Sometimes I do it online. It just depends. So I've gone back and forth. That could be, moved into the non-Alta, Knewton Alta assignments. Then the non-Newton Alta assignments that I've been able to do, which has really been helpful for me, is 20% in-class activities. And what that means, we meet twice a week for 1 hour and 20 minutes. So that's for the 16 weeks, and the 16th week is our finals week. So I don't have a lot of time with them. So when I do have time with them, I like to take what they've learned and apply it to real world activities. And Newton Alta has allowed me to do that. For example, just a basic one would be measures of central tendency and measures of variation. I can tell if they've mastered the concept before they get to class, and then we collect data. I have them collect their own data that's important to them, and then we run those statistics on their data, and then they talk about it and present it. And it's been very helpful for me and my students in learning these concepts. Again, just a quick breakdown of this. My students get credit for homework, which is very important because I've realized over the years that if you allow students to make mistakes but still do well, they'll do it. And if you give them credit for it, they're going to do it. If you don't give them credit for it, usually it's the other way around. I give them a set number of days to complete Newton Alta. Going back to the quote from earlier, some of my students learn better at 1 o'clock in the morning. Some of them like to get up and work at 8 o'clock in the morning. And that's fine. If they use Newton Alta to learn the concepts, they can do it on their own time. Within their schedule. Some of them are athletes, some of them work, things like that. All my students are encouraged to make 100% on their assignments. That's also been a great help to me as well. If you give them the opportunity to make 100, most of them want to make it. It's almost like a game. A lot of my students treat it like a game. They want to make that 100, and it helps them understand more of the concepts. And they work to mastery as well, which is helpful for me. Quizzes count 20% as well. Sometimes I'll give them quizzes, and I encourage them to use outside resources. I talk to my students in this day and age, there's access to so much. So I like that Newton Alta allows them to do, I can do assessments outside of class. Again, I give them a set number of days to do it, and they're encouraged to make 100% on it. Now, the quiz is a little bit different because I don't let them redo the quiz. But based on what they learn in Newton Alta, and I can look at their completion rate and their mastery level, and then what we do in class, most of them do very well on the quizzes. Midterm and final, again, this could go either way. I've had some classes where I do them online and some classes where I do them in class, but again, my grades seem to be much better over the past 2 years working with Newton Alta because they understand the core concepts when they get to class, and I know because I can see it in the data analysis windows, and that helps me a lot. So most of my students come in, they've worked it, they've worked to a mastery level close to 100%, and then we work on real world examples, and it seems to stick a lot better for my students. Again, the in-class activities, I say / lecture. Sometimes I have to fill in the gaps. If there's Newton Alta will let me know if a certain concept is being missed more than others on their homework. So if I need to address that topic, I will. I'll talk about that. That allows me to not just give a blanket lecture, but to hone in on what they're missing as a group. Then when we get into class, we work real world problems. We talk about it. I do a lot of group assignments. I think collaborative learning is a big thing for my students that they seem to do really well with. So they learn, they get into their groups, they talk about it, they show their examples, and then they present to each other. And it's been amazing for their learning overall. Okay, just a couple of things here that I've been able to see from Newton Alta's. My students learn while they do their homework. Because they work to mastery and they get the feedback, and it even drops them down a level if they need a little remediation, they learn at home, which is what we want them to do. In the past, I would assign homework, and half of them might have it, and then 25% of those would maybe know what they're doing. I don't have to worry about that as much now. I can see it in the data analysis window before they ever come to class, how many of them have actually done the work and to what mastery level. I love that it gives them immediate assistance because there's such a diverse group of students, like I said, in terms of classification and levels of learning and understanding from the past. And my students have given me great feedback on being able to do that. They love the fact that they can work to mastery. Their grade is in their hand. So again, most of them want to make that 100, which helps me when they come to class and they've already been exposed to the topic. This is just a really, really cool example. I had a student last year, this young person, I go through and look at their different, once they reach mastery, I like to see what they did. And this one just stood out to me. This student here, if you look here, they worked all of these problems. If you see they have 46 correct, 72 incorrect, they watched 24 instructional pieces or looked at 24 instructional pieces. And if you notice the grade at the top, the student made 100. So the student came to class and I said, look, I was looking through all of your work and I noticed how many problems you worked. I said, just curious, because they never called me, they never emailed me, I never got anything saying they needed any help. And the student said, well, sir, you said that we could work to 100%, and that's what I did. And I started missing certain topics, and then I went and reviewed, and I went online, and I watched the videos here, and they said that I learned the concept, and I moved on. And I was so impressed. This is a perfect snapshot of what Knewton Alta has done for my students. This student worked over 100 problems and never complained, never sought help from me, which they could have. And I deal with 100 students at least a semester. So that's a lot of students to have to work with. Well, this is a perfect example of what Knewton Alta has done for me as a teacher. A couple of things too I want to talk about the Knewton Alta team. Is anytime I've ever talked to them or called them or emailed them, they're always happy to help. We talked about a little bit earlier, sometimes some companies take years to make changes. I've asked them to do things and they've made changes within the week, which has been really impressive. They didn't have to do it, but I would bring it up. And so that helps me because I feel like they're listening to me. So I really enjoy the fact that if I bring something up that they help me. They've made me a better teacher. Having access to this adaptive software has made me a better teacher. I don't spend time just spouting things that my students start missing and don't tell me about, and I don't find out until the test. I know before they ever come to class what they've done, so then I know what I need to hone in on. That's helped me this year as well to pick certain topics that I know students are possibly going to have issues with and bring them up before we get to those points in the lesson. So it's been great. It's been a great experience.
Super. Okay, we're going to move into the question and answer section now. So you could either type your question into the question box, or you can click the little hand icon and we'll unmute your microphone and you can ask your question live. So we already have a question. G, you use Alta, but you also assign a textbook?
I do. I've used OpenStax. OpenStax, they talked about a little bit earlier. OpenStax aligns with the statistics course. That's helped a lot as well. It's helped because day one, I talk to my students and they say, well, what book are we going to need? And then I tell them we're going to use a free book, and Knewton Alta is going to cost you about $40 for the semester. And they're just shocked that on the front end that I'm worried about them financially, and then that helps me as well grab them then, and then we get into the course and everything seems to be working really well.
Just a note on that too, sorry. We are working on ways to basically expose our instructional text to make it more book-like and easy to access. So if people want to stream through our content in a linear fashion in terms of the instruction, they will be able to do that.
Yeah, because right now the content, which could be OpenStax or it could be original Knewton content or it could be a video, it comes up really as needed and it's chunked, correct?
Yep, that's how it works.
Okay, super. Someone just asked a question. Just to clarify, one of the slides mentioned that students are encouraged to make 100% of the midterm and final. So students are allowed to make the midterm and final until they get the grade they want? Or is this a choice you have as an instructor?
It just depends. To be honest with you, when I first started, I played with a couple of things, and I probably need to state now that when I say that, they're encouraged, obviously, but I don't let them retake the midterm and final. That's a one-shot deal. Sometimes with quizzes in the past, I've made them one-shot, two-shot, three-shot deals, so they could redo it and make 100. So it just depends. I've been very fluid with it because I've been trying to see what works best for me. Overall, though, I think the midterm and final are probably the best example of not doing more than one time and letting my students see what they've really learned. So yeah, that's been fluid over the past couple of years.
And just to kind of clarify, we have adaptive assignments where students get a lot of different question types to practice with. This is where the adaptive and personalization comes in. But then after that, you're able to also create a quiz or a test, which is different from that practice scenario. So that's probably what G is using to create midterms and finals.
Okay. Question: Do you have an LMS integration at your school, G?
Yes, we use Canvas, and it integrates beautifully. The grades export from Knewton Alta into my course. I've had no problems with linking assignments, quizzes, tests. They even have some review stuff that I can put in, and my students can review, and it pulls from all of the stuff that I've used, because I don't use every single learning objective in the entire Knewton catalog. So it'll just pull. I'll say I need a review for my stuff, and it'll pull it right over. So it's been a beautiful integration with Canvas.
Okay, another question. If the questions are adaptive, that means that some of the students who are less proficient could be presented with a lot of problems. Have you had some that are overwhelmed because they are presented with so many problems?
I would say I've had a few, but it's not been as many. Most of the students that get overwhelmed are the students that continue to miss them, because they're just hoping that if they keep putting it in. So I joke with them sometimes, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. So most of my students that get overwhelmed, for example, I have students who say maybe are not as proficient. They might have to do 30 problems versus some of them that are really proficient that'll maybe do 10 to 12 on a certain learning objective. So I would say overall, no. The frustration comes, and then the interesting part is Knewton Alta allows me to change the way they do things and say, look, you've got to get these right. You have the ability to watch the videos, read about it, do research on the internet, and it's changed the way my students think. They try to get them right the first time so that they don't have to do too many problems.
But this is the kind of system where you do have to manage because it is different from other systems where you have to manage their expectations up front, right?
Correct.
And any other? Oh, okay. Another question has come in. I'm a bit nervous about implementing Knewton Alta in my stats course, so I wanted to run a pilot first. Maybe ask for volunteers who want to try it out in my class, or as the rest of the students who use the traditional textbook and the traditional method. Do you see any problems with this? Katy, you can confirm or deny, but we have commonly helped run pilots with instructors willing to try Alta, correct?
Yep, we definitely have run pilots, and then we've actually run mixed pilots, just like you're talking about now. So some universities have students that have been enrolled in other courses with other providers, like maybe Cengage or Pearson. So half of their students will be on one platform, half on another, and half on Knewton. But they seem to roll into each other really well, and it's a great way to kind of see the results compared to a traditional textbook.
So definitely, yes. When you get the response with the link to the recording, just hit reply. I'm going to copy people who can help you get set up with the pilot. So we'll get that going as part of the follow-up to this session. Any other questions? Okay, I just want to confirm pricing of Alta. For the summer, Alta is $44, but after August 1st, Alta will be $39.95 per semester, or we also offer a subscription base called Alta Pass, which gives 2 years of access to any of our statistics courses for $79.95. And then we also, if you're running a summer course, a short summer course, we also have a monthly subscription for all of our courses. We have a monthly subscription for $9.95 per month. So, any other questions? Okay, super. Thank you. I do appreciate the info. That's great. Thank you, G and Katie, and thank you for our attendees. And have a great rest of your day. Goodbye.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you. Thank you.